Millionaire got call from his ex-wife. My mom needs a donor. Only you can save her. He ran without. 10 years of carefully constructed reality crumbled in that moment. Ethan froze mid-stride, his designer shoes suddenly rooted to the polished hospital floor as he watched a teenage boy laugh at something on his phone. A boy with his eyes, his jawline, his smile. Have you ever had your entire life changed in a single heartbeat? Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. The 3 words that destroyed Ethan Cole's perfect life weren't, "I love you," or even, "I hate you." They were "Yours, Father," whispered in a hospital corridor where life and death hung in perfect, terrifying balance. 10 years of carefully constructed reality crumbled in that moment. Ethan froze mid-stride, his designer shoes suddenly rooted to the polished hospital floor as he watched a teenage boy laugh at something on his phone. A boy with his eyes, his jawline, his smile. He doesn't know, Tessa added, her voice barely audible above the hospital's mechanical hum. He doesn't know you're his father. Yet, the world tilted sideways. Behind them, monitors beeped a countdown for Tessa's mother, the woman who once treated Ethan like a son, now dying unless he opened his veins to save her. And somewhere across town, his fiancée was choosing wedding venues, completely unaware that Ethan's past had just collided with his present. "You had no right," he managed, the words escaping through clenched teeth. But even as anger flared, his eyes remained fixed on the boy, Jackson, who was everything Ethan never knew he'd lost. "You weren't there to claim any rights," Tessa countered, eyes flashing with a decade of stored resentment. "You chose your empire over us." Before Ethan could respond, alarms blared from Tessa's mother's room. Code blue. Doctors rushed past them, and in that chaos, Jackson looked up, meeting Ethan's gaze for the first time. An innocent collision between souls that shared blood but not history. Have you ever had your entire life changed in a single heartbeat? That split second where everything you thought was true suddenly wasn't? Tell me in the comments if you've ever experienced that kind of life earthquake. Because Ethan Cole was about to learn that some foundations can't be rebuilt once they crack. "Mr. Cole, we need your decision now." The doctor's voice cut through Ethan's shock, clipboard extended, consent forms waiting. "Your bone marrow is a perfect match, but we need to begin immediately." Ethan glanced between the medical forms and the waiting room where Jackson had returned to his phone, oblivious to how his existence would demolish 2 separate lives. The boy's dark hair fell across his forehead exactly like Ethan's had at that age. "You kept my son from me for 15 years. Ethan's whisper held the deadly calm that had made him feared in boardrooms nationwide. "And now you expect me to save your mother." Tessa flinched. "I'm not using my mother's condition to manipulate you." "Aren't you? I call because she's dying and you're the only match." Finding out about Jackson now, she hesitated. "That wasn't the plan." "What exactly was the plan, Tessa?" "Wait until he's graduating college to mention I exist." The doctor cleared his throat. "Mr. Cole, I'll sign." Ethan grabbed the clipboard, scrawling his signature. "Not for you, for her, and for him." As the medical team prepped him for the procedure, Ethan's phone vibrated with messages from Camille, his fiancée of 8 months. Pictures of wedding venues, questions about floral arrangements, a life that suddenly felt like it belonged to someone else. The anesthesiologist explained the procedure while nurses attached monitoring equipment. Through the doorway, Ethan caught glimpses of Jackson pacing the hall, stealing curious glances his way. The boy's athletic build, his thoughtful expression, reflections of himself Ethan had never expected to see. "Why now?" Ethan asked as Tessa entered the pre-op room. The truth. She sat beside his gurney, looking smaller than he remembered. "Mom got sick 6 months ago. When they said she needed a donor, I fought testing you. But no one else matched." She paused, and Jackson started asking questions. Real questions about you. Not just why you weren't around, but who you really are. "So, you're going to donate and disappear again?" "I didn't think you'd want to stay." Her voice held no accusation, just weary acceptance. "You made your choice pretty clear last time." Before Ethan could respond, the anesthesia began pulling him under. His last conscious thought wasn't fear of the procedure. It was the crushing realization that somewhere in Nevada, a boy with his blood had grown up believing his father hadn't wanted him. Have you ever discovered that the story you've been telling yourself for years wasn't the whole truth? Drop a comment sharing how you handled learning that your perspective was just one piece of a much larger puzzle. And if you think Tessa was right to protect her son or wrong to hide the truth, let me know whose side you're on. Because in family battles, there's rarely a clear winner. Ethan woke to the steady beep of monitors and the dull ache in his hip where they'd extracted bone marrow. The recovery room clock read 7:38 p.m. Nearly 6 hours had passed. You're awake. A nurse appeared, checking his vitals. The donation was successful. Mrs. Rivera is responding well. And my Ethan caught himself. And Jackson, the young man, he's in the waiting room. Been there since you went into surgery. She adjusted his four. Your wife asked me to tell you she's getting coffee. She's not my wife. The words came automatically, sharper than intended. The nurse's expression didn't change. Your fiancée arrived about an hour ago. She's with administration handling your private room arrangements. Ethan closed his eyes. Camille was here. The worlds he kept separate were colliding faster than he could manage. The door opened, and Jackson stepped in hesitantly. Mom said I could check on you. His voice carried the unsteady pitch of adolescence. They said you saved Grandma. Up close, the resemblance was undeniable. Jackson had Ethan's eyes, his cheekbones, even the slight asymmetry to his smile. The doctors did the saving, Ethan replied. I just provided materials. Jackson nodded, studying him with uncomfortable intensity. You look like the guy in Mom's old pictures, the one she keeps in her dresser drawer. Ethan's heart hammered against his ribs. Your mom and I knew each other a long time ago. Yeah, she said you were important once. Jackson shuffled his feet. Thanks for helping Grandma. Mom's been really scared. The simplicity of the boy's gratitude felt like a knife between Ethan's ribs. His child, was thanking him as if he were a stranger who'd performed an unexpected kindness, not a father fulfilling the most basic obligation. Before Ethan could respond, Camille swept into the room in a cloud of expensive perfume and confusion. Ethan, what happened? The hospital called saying you'd undergone surgery. She rushed to his bedside, ignoring Jackson completely. Why didn't you call me? It was an emergency donation, Ethan said carefully, watching Jackson over Camille's shoulder. For an old friend's mother. Camille turned, noticing Jackson for the first time. And you are? Daxon Rivera. He extended his hand with surprising maturity. My grandmother needed bone marrow. Mr. Cole helped us out. The door opened again, and Tessa entered with 2 coffee cups. She froze, taking in the tableau before her. Camille bent over Ethan's bed, Jackson standing awkwardly nearby. For people, 3 generations, 2 relationships, 1 explosive truth. If you've ever been caught between your past and your future, drop a comment below. That moment when your old life and new life crash into each other can change everything. Has someone from your past ever reappeared at exactly the wrong moment? Share your story, because Ethan's collision course was just beginning, and the crash would leave no survivors. I should leave you to rest, Jackson said, backing toward the door as tension electrified the room. Mom, I'll be in the cafeteria. After he left, silence stretched like a rubber band ready to snap. Tessa, Camille's voice held polite confusion. From Dallas? Your ex-wife Tessa. Ethan struggled to sit upright. Camille, this isn't how I wanted. Ethan donated for my mother, Tessa interrupted, setting the coffee cups down with deliberate care. We needed a specific match. He was kind enough to help. Camille's eyes narrowed, her publicist's instincts detecting the unsaid. And the boy, my son, Tessa answered, not looking at Ethan. I see. But Camille's tone suggested she saw far more than anyone was admitting. She turned to Ethan, her expression professionally pleasant. We should discuss this privately. Camille, not now. She squeezed his hand with warning pressure. We'll talk when you're feeling better. After she left, Tessa sank into the chair beside Ethan's bed. She seems efficient, She handles PR for my hotel group. Convenient. Don't. Ethan's voice hardened. You don't get to judge my choices. Not after 15 years of secrets. Tessa leaned forward. Your bone marrow is already saving my mother's life. The doctors are calling it miraculous. I owe you for that. You owe me 15 years. And you owe Jackson an explanation for why his father never came looking for him. Her eyes glistened. We both made mistakes, Ethan. The door opened again, and Jackson returned, carrying a chocolate pudding cup. Grandma's awake. She's asking for you, Mom. Tessa stood. I'll be right back. When she left, Jackson hesitated, then approached Ethan's bed. You don't look like someone who just had surgery. Good genes, Ethan replied, studying the boy's face. His face reflected back with youthful smoothness. Mom says you build hotels. Edo. Cool. Jackson fidgeted with the pudding cup. I did a project on architecture last year. Got an A. Pride, unexpected and fierce, surged through Ethan's chest. You like design? Yeah. And math. Mom says I get the math thing from my dad. Jackson's eyes flickered up, watching for reaction. Ethan's breath caught. Your mom talks about your father? Sometimes. Says he was smart. Ambitious. Jackson shrugged. Also says he chose his career over family. So I guess he's some workaholic somewhere. The casual assessment of his character, accurate but incomplete, hit Ethan like a physical blow. People make choices they regret. Jackson. The words emerged before Ethan could censor them. Sometimes they don't realize what they're giving up until it's too late. Does blood really define family? Or is it the choices we make? Comment below if you believe biology trumps upbringing, or if love matters more than DNA. And if you've ever reconnected with someone from your past, how did it change your understanding of yourself? Some truths can only be seen through another person's eyes. The following morning brought the collision Ethan had been dreading. Camille arrived as Tessa was helping him with discharge papers, both women coolly professional in their mutual assessment. Your private car is waiting, Camille informed him, fingers flying across her phone screen. I've booked the presidential suite at our Henderson property. Actually, Ethan began, I thought I'd stay at. You need proper recovery accommodations, Camille interrupted. Not some budget motel. Tessa's expression remained neutral. Jackson wanted to invite you to his baseball game this weekend. But if you're heading back to Phoenix. Baseball? Ethan caught the lifeline. What position? Pitcher, Tessa answered. Like you were. The small revelation that she'd remembered, that perhaps she'd told Jackson about his father's love for the game, shifted something in Ethan's chest. I'm staying through the weekend, he decided, watching Camille's perfectly maintained smile tighten. Ethan, we have the Wellington merger presentation Monday morning. Send a jet for me Sunday night. Tessa gathered her purse. I should check on Mom. Jackson will be by after school if you're up for visitors. After she left, Camille's composure cracked. That boy looks exactly like you. Ethan met her gaze steadily. Yes. Is he why we're really here? Not some convenient emergency donation. I didn't know about him until yesterday. Camille stared, her publicity-trained mind calculating angles and exposure. This could affect the Rivera Group merger if it leaks. An unknown heir appearing suddenly. Shareholders hate surprises. He's not a PR problem, Camille. He's my son. A son you never mentioned having. A son I never knew existed. She sat on the edge of the hospital bed. What does this mean for us? For our plans? The question hung between them, and Ethan realized he didn't have an answer. 24 hours ago, his life had perfect clarity. Expand the hotel empire, marry Camille, secure his legacy through business achievements. Now, I need time, he finally said. Time. Camille's laugh held no humor. The one thing Ethan Cole never gives anyone. Later that afternoon, Jackson arrived wearing a Henderson High baseball uniform, clearly coming straight from practice. He hovered in the doorway of Ethan's hotel suite, taking in the luxury with teenage curiosity. Mom said you wanted to see the game this weekend, if that's okay with you. Jackson shrugged with studied casualness. It's whatever. Coach says I might start. I'd like to be there. The boy nodded, then blurted. Are you really rich? Mom said you own hotels. Ethan smiled. I do all right. Cool. Jackson fidgeted. So, were you and Mom, like, serious? Back when you knew her? The innocent question concealed a minefield. What could Ethan say? That he'd loved and left Tessa? That he'd chosen empire building over family without knowing a child was part of the equation? Ever been caught in a lie of omission? When the truth you didn't tell becomes bigger than any lie you could have invented. Share your experience with keeping secrets that eventually came to light. Because sometimes silence speaks louder than words, and what Ethan didn't say would echo for generations. Saturday morning dawned clear and hot, typical Nevada spring weather that would bake the baseball diamond by afternoon. Ethan dressed carefully in casual clothes that still probably cost more than most Henderson residents made in a week. His phone chimed with texts from his executive team. Urgent questions about the Wellington merger, projected revenue adjustments, PR strategy for the upcoming quarter. The empire he built demanded constant attention. 10 years ago, he would have been on the next flight back to Phoenix, handling each crisis personally. Now, he typed a brief response. Deal with it. I'll be back Monday. The high school baseball field was exactly like thousands across America. Chain link fence, wooden bleachers, chalk lines slightly crooked. Parents clustered in small groups, the weekend warriors with their camp chairs and coolers. Ethan spotted Tessa immediately, sitting halfway up the bleachers in a Henderson high cap. She looked different here, more relaxed, her corporate office attire replaced by jeans and a team shirt with Rivera 14 printed across the back. She noticed his approach, making room beside her with wary eyes. You came. I said I would. He settled next to her, uncomfortably aware of curious glances from nearby parents. Jackson was up half the night worrying about his curveball, she said, watching the team warm up. He gets nervous before games. I did too at his age. I remember. Her voice softened with memory. You used to pace the apartment, visualizing every pitch. The casual reference to their shared past, their tiny first apartment, the life before wealth and separation, caught Ethan off guard. How easily she recalled details he'd forced himself to forget. Does he know I'm here? Ethan asked. He asked if you were coming. Try to sound like he didn't care. Tessa smiled faintly. He gets that from you too. On the field, Jackson took position on the mound, his lanky frame broadcasting teenage awkwardness until he began his windup. Then everything changed, his body becoming fluid, coordinated, powerful. The pitch landed with perfect precision. Pride surged through Ethan's chest. His son, his blood, his unknown legacy. He's good, he managed. State championship potential, according to his coach. Tessa's pride matched his own. He's been scouted already. A tall man approached the bleachers, climbing confidently toward them. Sorry I'm late, he called to Tessa. Budget meeting ran long. Ethan tensed as the stranger settled on Tessa's other side, casually draping an arm across her shoulders and pressing a kiss to her temple. David, this is Ethan Cole, Tessa introduced, discomfort evident in her rigid posture. Ethan, this is David Mercer, my fiancé. David extended his hand with easy confidence. Thanks for what you did for Eleanor. We've been worried sick. Your fiancé, Ethan repeated, shaking the offered hand while processing this new complication. 7 years together, finally making it official next month. David grinned, completely unaware of the undercurrents. Jackson's going to be our best man. If you've ever had to watch someone you once loved build a life with someone else, you understand that unique pain. Have you ever wondered, what if, about a relationship that ended? Comment below about a time when seeing an ex with someone new made you question everything. Because sometimes the hardest surgeries aren't the ones that cut into bone, but the ones that slice right through the heart. Henderson High won 4-2, with Jackson striking out 7 batters and allowing only 3 hits. The final out, a fastball that painted the outside corner perfectly, sent the home crowd into cheers. He's got your arm, Tessa said quietly, as David chatted with other parents nearby. In your competitive streak, Ethan responded, watching Jackson accept congratulations from teammates. Remember how you used to tackle law school exams? Like they were dragons to be slain. Her laugh held genuine warmth. I haven't thought about that in years. The moment of connection hung between them, fragile as spun glass, until David returned. "Let's take the champ for victory pizza," he suggested, oblivious to the tension. Later, squeezed into a booth at Gino's Pizzeria, Jackson's favorite, according to Tessa, Ethan watched his son demolish a large pepperoni while describing every pitch of the game in meticulous detail. "Coach says my slider needs work, but my two-seamer was breaking nasty today." Jackson demonstrated the grip with animated enthusiasm.
"Your follow-through looked a little tight in the 6th inning," Ethan observed, then hesitated. "If you want some tips." Jackson's eyes lit up. "You know pitching. Your mom didn't tell you? I played college ball at Arizona State." "No way. Then my dream school." Jackson turned accusingly to Tessa. "Mom, you never said he played for ASU." Tessa faltered. "I didn't think. I've got pictures from those days," Ethan offered. "Team made regionals my junior year." "That's sick. Can I see them?" As dinner progressed, Ethan noticed David growing quieter, watching the easy rapport developing between Ethan and Jackson with increasingly troubled eyes. When Jackson excused himself to the restroom, David finally spoke. "How long are you planning to stay in Henderson, Ethan?" The question held no hostility, just carefully masked concern. "I haven't decided." Ethan met the other man's gaze directly. "There are some things I need to figure out. Things involving my fiancé and the boy I've helped raise for 7 years." Tessa laid her hand on David's arm. "This isn't the time." "When is the time, Tess?" David's voice remained low. "When were you planning to tell me that Jackson's biological father was suddenly back in the picture?" "After the wedding. I only found out he was coming 2 days before he arrived." Tessa protested. "And it was for Mom. Was it? Or was this always about more than a bone marrow donation?" Ethan intervened. "David, I had no idea Jackson existed until I got here. This situation is new for everyone. Except it's not new for me and Jackson. We have 7 years of baseball games, homework help, and family dinners. 7 years where you were completely absent." The accusation hit its mark. Before Ethan could respond, Jackson returned, immediately sensing the changed atmosphere. "What's going on?" "Nothing, bud." David forced a smile. "Just grown-up stuff." "About me?" Jackson looked between the 3 adults, his adolescent radar for deception pinging loudly. "Why does everyone get weird whenever you guys talk?" The question hung in the air, the inevitable confrontation approaching faster than any of them were prepared for. Have you ever been the center of a secret everyone knows but you? Comment below if you've experienced that strange feeling when conversations stop when you enter a room. What's worse, discovering a difficult truth or realizing everyone has been hiding it from you? Because sometimes the most painful awakenings aren't from surgery, but from seeing clearly what everyone else has known all along. The inevitable explosion came the following morning. Ethan was checking out of the hotel when his phone rang. Tessa, her voice tight with controlled panic. Jackson found the old photos. He knows. 30 minutes later, Ethan sat in Tessa's modest living room, facing his son across a coffee table strewn with faded photographs. Evidence of a past deliberately hidden. "You're my father." Jackson's voice cracked, hands trembling as he held a yellowed newspaper clipping of Ethan in an ASU baseball uniform. "My actual father." "Yes." Ethan didn't flinch from the accusation in the boy's eyes. "And you all lied to me. My whole life." Tessa reached for her son's hand. "Jackson, I was trying to protect you." "From what?" "From knowing who I am." The teenager's face flushed with anger. "Everyone's been acting weird since he showed up, and now I know why. Were you ever going to tell me?" The question hung in the air, demanding truth after 15 years of evasion. "I wanted to tell you when you were older," Tessa finally said. "When you could understand that complicated relationships." "I'm not 5, Mom. I get complicated. What I don't get is why my father," he jabbed a finger toward Ethan, "never wanted to know me." "That's not what happened," Ethan began. "Then what had happened? Where were you for 15 years? The direct question demanded an equally direct answer. Ethan leaned forward, meeting his son's gaze. "I didn't know you existed, Jackson. Your mother and I separated before she knew she was pregnant. She made a choice not to tell me." Jackson turned to Tessa, betrayal etched across his features. Is that true? Tessa's composure cracked. Yes. I found out I was pregnant after Ethan, and I had already divorced. He was building his business, completely focused on success. You didn't think I deserved a father? Jackson stood, pacing the small living room. Or you didn't think he deserved to know about me? Both, Tessa admitted, tears streaming down her face. I was hurt and angry, and I told myself I was protecting you from someone who'd already chosen career over family. That wasn't your choice to make, Ethan said quietly. No, she agreed, meeting his gaze. It wasn't, and I've lived with that mistake every day since. Jackson turned to Ethan, vulnerability breaking through anger. Would you have wanted me, if you'd known? The question stripped away pretense, cutting to the heart of every child's fear. Ethan stood, crossing to his son. Jackson, if I'd known about you, nothing would have kept me away. Not hotels, not money, nothing. He hesitated, then placed his hands on the boy's shoulders. I can't change the past 15 years, but I'm here now, if you'll let me be. Jackson's face crumpled. 15 years of fatherless birthdays and absent baseball games crystallizing into tears he tried desperately to hide. I have a dad, he choked out. David's been my dad, and he's done an amazing job. Ethan acknowledged, the admission costing him more than any business deal. But you're my son, my blood, and I'd like the chance to know you. Jackson pulled away, overwhelming emotions driving him toward the door. I need to think. I need space. After he left, silence filled the living room, broken only by Tessa's quiet sobs. What now? She finally asked. Now, Ethan said, we do whatever it takes to help him heal from what we broke. Have you ever discovered that a lie told to protect you actually caused more damage than the truth would have? Share your experience below. And if you had to choose between a comfortable illusion and a painful reality, which would you pick? Because sometimes the most difficult recovery isn't from what happens to us, but from what we learn about those we trusted most. David arrived as evening approached, his expression grim when Tessa explained what had happened. Where is he now? He asked, concern overriding tension. Baseball field, Tessa answered. Coach lets him practice when he needs to clear his head. David nodded, familiar with Jackson's habits in a way that made Ethan's chest tighten. I'll go talk to him. We should all go, Ethan suggested. No offense, Ethan, but I've been handling Jackson's emotional crises for 7 years. This one might need a familiar approach. The subtle reminder of Ethan's absence hung between them. He's my son. Biologically, yes. David's voice remained measured. But fatherhood is more than DNA. It's being there for science projects and nightmares, and learning to ride a bike. I would have been there if I'd known he existed. Maybe. David held Ethan's gaze. Or maybe your hotels would have still come first. We'll never know, will we? The accusation cut deep because it contained a kernel of truth. 10 years ago, would Ethan have been the father Jackson deserved? The man he was then, driven, obsessed with success, working 18-hour days, might have failed his son in different ways. I'm not trying to replace you, Ethan said finally. But I'm not walking away either. David nodded slowly. Fair enough. But remember, Jackson already has a family that works. Whatever role you want in his life needs to add to that, not destroy it. At the baseball field, they found Jackson throwing pitches against the backstop with mechanical precision, each thud of ball against chain link a physical manifestation of his anger. Hey, slugger, David called, approaching the mound. Mind if we join you? Jackson's expression hardened when he saw Ethan. Free country. David moved with practiced ease, retrieving the ball and tossing it back. Your mom filled me in. That's a lot to process in one day. Yeah, finding out my whole life is a lie. Kind of a big deal. Jackson's next pitch slammed against the backstop with extra force. Not your whole life, David corrected gently. Just one part of your story that was more complicated than you knew. They lied to me. They did, David agreed, surprising both Jackson and Ethan with his honesty. Your mom made a mistake by not telling you or Ethan the truth. But mistakes don't erase love, Jackson. Whatever. The teenager's deflection couldn't mask his pain. Ethan stepped forward. Jackson, I can't change the past. but I'd like to be part of your future if you'll let me. Why? Because you suddenly feel guilty. Because you're my son. Because I see myself in you. Because I've missed 15 years I can never get back. Jackson's next pitch went wild, skipping across the infield dirt. What am I supposed to do? Just start calling you Dad and pretend everything's normal? No, Ethan said. You call me whatever you want. You set the pace. You decide what this relationship looks like. The ball hung forgotten in Jackson's hand as he looked between the two men, one who had given him life, one who had helped shape it. I need time, he finally said, echoing words Ethan himself had used days earlier. You have it, Ethan promised. I'm not going anywhere. For the first time since the revelation, Jackson's expression softened slightly. Really? What about your hotels and stuff? They'll manage without me for a while. David's surprised glance confirmed the significance of this statement, a declaration of priorities Ethan Cole had never made before. What makes someone a true parent, biology or presence? Is fatherhood in DNA or daily acts of love? Comment below with your thoughts on what creates a family. And if you've ever had to share someone you love, how did you make peace with new relationships that changed old dynamics? Because sometimes the deepest connections aren't the ones we're born with, but the ones we choose to build. Ethan's temporary, while stretched into weeks. He rented a furnished apartment in Henderson, conducted business remotely, and resisted his executive team's increasingly desperate pleas to return to Phoenix. Camille's ultimatum came via text rather than in person. Either come home or admit this isn't temporary. When Ethan chose silence over promises, she mailed his things to Nevada along with her engagement ring. The development should have devastated him. Instead, Ethan felt an unexpected lightness as he focused on building something more valuable than any hotel, a relationship with his son. It began with small moments. Jackson agreed to weekly batting practice, their shared love of baseball creating neutral territory where trust could grow. Ethan taught him pitch grips his own college coach had shown him, while Jackson demonstrated the slider he developed with David's help. Mom says you were good enough for the minors, Jackson commented one afternoon, retrieving balls from the cage. Why'd you quit? Shoulder injury my senior year, Ethan replied. Lost velocity and never got it back. That sucks. It led me to business, so not all bad. Jackson's next question came casually, but Ethan recognized its importance. Did you love my mom? Back then. The direct inquiry deserved honesty. Very much. We were young, ambitious. Me with business, her with law school. We had big dreams. Then what happened? I got obsessed with success. Started measuring my worth by my bank account. Worked constantly, missed anniversaries, forgot what mattered. Ethan's admission came easier than expected. By the time I realized what I was losing, she'd already decided she deserved better. She did deserve better, Jackson said bluntly, teenage directness cutting through pretense. So did I. You're right. You both did. The simple acknowledgement seemed to satisfy something in Jackson. He nodded, then asked, "Want to see my curveball grip?" These moments accumulated like deposits in an emotional bank account. Small investments building towards something meaningful. Jackson began texting Ethan about school projects, baseball stats, random teenage observations. Ethan prioritized each message above billion-dollar negotiations. David watched their developing bond with complicated emotions, maintaining a cordial relationship with Ethan while establishing clear boundaries. Jackson needs stability, he emphasized during one conversation, not competition between father figures. I agree, Ethan assured him. You've been there for him his whole life. I respect that. Their truce remained fragile but functional, united by mutual concern for Jackson's well-being. Tessa proved harder to navigate. Their interactions remained cautiously polite, limited to co-parenting logistics, both avoiding the undercurrents that still pulsed beneath the surface of every conversation. Until one evening when Ethan returned Jackson home after a baseball tournament in Reno. Finding Tessa alone on the porch swing, he hesitated instead of immediately leaving. He pitched great today, Ethan offered, lingering by the steps. Coach is talking about college scouts next season. I know. He texted me after every inning. Tessa smiled, maternal pride evident. He's never been this excited about his future. Tessa, about the past. Don't. She held up her hand. We've both apologized enough. Not for everything. Ethan stepped closer. I never said I was sorry for being the kind of man you couldn't trust with the truth about her child. That's on me. The admission hung between them, shifting something fundamental in their carefully maintained distance. 15 years is a long time, she finally said. Yes, he agreed. And no time at all. Have you ever reconnected with someone from your past, only to discover that time changed everything and nothing simultaneously? Share your experience with relationships that get a second chance. Did you find healing or just reopen old wounds? Because sometimes playing catch means more than throwing a ball back and forth. It means catching pieces of a past you thought was gone forever. The Henderson community welcomed Ethan with typical small-town curiosity. The mysterious wealthy father who appeared from nowhere to claim his place in the Rivera family story. He felt their eyes at school events and baseball games, speculating about his intentions. You're causing quite the stir at the PDA, Tessa remarked after Jackson's end-of-year award ceremony, where Ethan had sat proudly between her and David in an awkward but functional family unit. Small towns and their gossip, Ethan replied, walking her to her car while David and Jackson talked with the coach. It's not just gossip. People care about Jackson. They're protective, and they think I might hurt him. Can you blame them? The absentee father suddenly appearing with his millions. I'm not trying to buy his affection. Tessa's expression softened. I know that now, but 15 years of creating narrative about you is hard to undo. What narrative did you create? Ethan asked, genuinely curious. That you chose wealth over family. That you weren't father material. She hesitated. It was easier than admitting I was too hurt and proud to tell you the truth. The honesty between them felt raw, exposed. A wound finally getting air after festering for years. Later that week, Ethan's careful balancing act between Henderson and Phoenix collapsed when his CFO arrived unannounced at his apartment door. The Wellington merger is falling apart, Marcus announced without preamble. The board is questioning your commitment. We need you back in Phoenix, Ethan. Not for a meeting, permanently. The ultimatum echoed Camille's earlier choice. Return to the Empire or admit this change was permanent. I can manage remotely, Ethan insisted. No, you can't. Not this business. Not at this level. Marcus's frustration showed in his clenched jaw. You built this company on your constant presence. Now you vanish for a kid you didn't know existed 2 months ago. Watch it, Ethan warned. That's my son you're talking about. Your son. Marcus shook his head. Meanwhile, the son you actually created, your company, is failing without you. The metaphor hit harder than intended. Ethan had indeed treated his business as his child, nurturing it with dedication he'd never given to actual family. Set up a video conference with the board for tomorrow, Ethan finally said. I'll handle it. After Marcus left, Ethan stood at his apartment window, watching Henderson families in the park across the street. Normal people with modest dreams and genuine connections. His phone buzzed. Jackson sending a photo of his science project with the caption, "First place." Dad helped with display, but the volcano chemistry was all me. Dad, not Ethan. Dad. David had earned that title through years of Little League games and homework help. Yet Jackson had begun using it for both men, creating his own solution to the complicated family geometry. When Tessa called an hour later about Jackson's upcoming birthday, Ethan made his decision. I want to host something special, he suggested. Not to show off or compete with your plans. Just to celebrate him. Ethan, I missed 15 birthdays. Tessa, let me make this one count. The silence stretched long enough that he thought she might refuse. Finally, she said, he'd like that. But keep it reasonable. He's still just a kid from Henderson. I know exactly who he is, Ethan replied. That's why this matters. Have you ever had to choose between professional success and personal fulfillment? Comment below about that moment when you realized what truly mattered to you. Was it worth the sacrifice? Because sometimes the most important board meetings aren't in corner offices, but in the quiet moments when we decide who we really want to be. Jackson's 16th birthday arrived on a perfect June morning. Ethan had reserved the entire Henderson Lake Park Pavilion, hiring local caterers rather than importing Phoenix luxury.
Tessa gave him a handmade scrapbook documenting his baseball career from t-ball through varsity, each page lovingly assembled with photos and newspaper clippings. "Mom, this is awesome," Jackson said, genuinely touched. "All my games. Every single one," she confirmed, squeezing his shoulder. Finally, Ethan handed over a small envelope. Jackson opened it curiously, then froze, eyes widening as he read the contents. "Are you serious?" he whispered. "What is it?" Tessa asked. Jackson held up 2 tickets. Spring training camp with the Arizona Diamondbacks. A whole weekend, with actual MLB players. "I know some people with the organization," Ethan explained. "They have a special program for promising high school pitchers." "This is insane." Jackson launched himself at Ethan, hugging him fiercely. "Thank you." The moment crystallized everything Ethan had been working toward. Not just reconnection, but genuine relationship. Not buying affection, but opening doors. Later, as the party wound down, Ethan found Tessa watching Jackson play basketball with his friends. "The camp was a good gift," she acknowledged. "Meaningful without being excessive. I'm learning." She turned toward him, afternoon light catching her face at an angle that transported Ethan back 15 years. "You've changed." "Had to," he replied. "The man I was wouldn't deserve a place in his life." "Or yours." The words hung between them, loaded with implications neither was ready to address. "Ethan," she began. "Mom, Dad," Jackson interrupted, jogging over. "Both dads, actually. Can Ryan sleep over tonight?" The simple request, the casual grouping of both dads, marked a subtle shift in their fragile family structure. Jackson had found his balance between past and present, biology and bond. Sometimes the greatest gift isn't what comes in a package, but what grows in the spaces between people who choose to try again. Have you ever received a second chance you never expected? Share below how it changed your perspective on what matters most. Because the most valuable presents are the ones that can't be wrapped. They can only be experienced together. July brought scorching heat to Henderson and a phone call Ethan had been dreading. His board chairman delivered the ultimatum with clinical precision. Return to Phoenix headquarters permanently or step down as CEO. "We've accommodated your remote work for months," Bernard explained without emotion. "The company needs stability. A decision. The timing couldn't have been worse." Jackson's travel baseball team had made regionals. Eleanor, Tessa's mother whom Ethan had saved with his bone marrow, was finally strong enough for visitors. And something indefinable had begun shifting between Ethan and Tessa, old wounds gradually healing through their shared focus on their son. That evening, Ethan sat on Eleanor's back porch, watching fireflies while explaining his dilemma. "The company wants me back in Phoenix full-time," he concluded. "Everything I built is there." Eleanor studied him with the directness of someone who'd faced death and lost her fear of uncomfortable truths. "Is it, though? The important parts?" "What do you mean?" "Ethan, I've watched you these past months. You talk about those hotels like they're just buildings now, not your identity." She patted his hand. "The truly valuable thing you've built is right here in Henderson." "Jackson," he agreed. "Not just Jackson. This version of yourself. The man who puts people before profit." Later that night, Ethan found himself parked outside Tessa's house long after dropping Jackson home. The windows glowed warm against the darkness, a beacon of the family life that had continued without him. His phone rang. "Tessa, are you sitting in my driveway?" she asked, amusement coloring her voice. "Maybe. Want to come in? Jackson's at David's tonight. Baseball movie marathon." The house felt different without Jackson's energetic presence. Quieter, more intimate. Tessa poured them wine in the kitchen, comfortable in yoga pants and an old t-shirt Ethan recognized from their marriage. "What's wrong?" she asked, noticing his expression. "You've been distracted all week. The board wants me back in Phoenix. Permanently." Her face remained carefully neutral. "And you're considering it. I built that company from nothing, Tessa. I know. It's who you were." "Were?" She met his gaze directly. The Ethan Cole I married would have already packed his bags. That man would choose business every time. And this version sits in my driveway at midnight, struggling with a decision that once would have been automatic. The observation hung between them, accurate and uncomfortable. Jackson would understand, she continued softly. He knows who you are, who you've always been. That's just it, Ethan said, setting down his glass. I'm not sure I want to be that person anymore. Something shifted in Tessa's expression, caution giving way to possibility. Then who do you want to be? The question penetrated years of practiced identity, striking at the core of Ethan's transformation. Someone worthy of a second chance, he answered. With my son, with this community. He hesitated, then added, with you. Tessa's breath caught. Ethan, I'm not asking for anything, he clarified quickly, just acknowledging truth. Coming back to Henderson wasn't just about Jackson. It was about finding pieces of myself I left behind. Have you ever reached a crossroads where going back to your old life suddenly seemed impossible? Share below about a moment when you realized you'd changed too much to return to who you once were. Because sometimes the most significant revelations aren't about what we want to pursue, but about what we can no longer accept. The Henderson Gazette ran the headline in early August. Hotel tycoon steps down, chooses family over fortune. The article detailed Ethan's decision to resign as CEO while maintaining controlling interest in the Cole Hotel Group. A compromise that shocked the business world but felt inevitable to those who had watched his transformation. What will you do now? David asked during one of their increasingly amicable co-parenting handoffs. I'm launching a regional development fund, Ethan explained, supporting small businesses around Henderson and similar communities, using what I know to help local entrepreneurs. David nodded approvingly. Roots rather than expansion. Exactly. Their relationship had evolved from tense rivalry to cautious respect. David had recently accepted a promotion requiring travel 3 weeks each month, a career advancement he'd previously declined while prioritizing his role in Jackson's life. I couldn't have taken this job before you showed up, he admitted to Ethan. Jackson needed stability. Now he has 2 fathers looking out for him. The acknowledgement meant more than any business award Ethan had ever received. As summer waned, the makeshift family unit found its rhythm. Jackson split time between households, bringing the same backpack and baseball gear back and forth like a connective thread. Ethan purchased a proper house, modest by his standards, but comfortable, with a backyard batting cage Jackson helped design. Tessa approached their evolving relationship with measured caution. The attraction that had never truly died now simmered beneath careful interactions, neither pushing too quickly despite the electricity that sometimes sparked when their hands accidentally touched or their eyes held too long. We're doing this backward, she observed one evening as they finalized plans for Jackson's upcoming school year. Most people date, get married, have children. We had a child, got divorced, and now we're what? Ethan asked when she didn't finish. I don't know, she admitted. Co-parents? Friends? Something else. The question had no simple answer. Their history contained too much pain for easy reconciliation, yet their present held undeniable connection beyond just shared DNA in their son. Maybe we don't need to label it, Ethan suggested. Maybe we just keep building whatever this is, one day at a time. His patient approach, so different from the demanding businessman she'd married, both surprised and attracted Tessa. This evolved Ethan, who measured success in relationships rather than revenue, fascinated her. The reconstruction extended beyond their personal lives. Eleanor's full recovery inspired Ethan to establish a bone marrow registry initiative, partnering with hospitals throughout Nevada to expand the donor database. You saved my mother, Tessa said during the program's launch event. Now you're helping save strangers. She saved me too, Ethan replied. Brought me back to Henderson, back to Jackson. He paused, then added quietly, back to you. The admission hung between them, neither acknowledging nor dismissing its significance. Later that week, Jackson burst into Ethan's home office, waving a college brochure. Coach says Arizona State Scouts are coming to our first game, early recruiting, and guess what? They've got this new sports business program that combines baseball and business management. How perfect is that? Ethan looked at his son, this miraculous blend of his ambition and Tessa's heart, and felt something he'd chased for years through wealth accumulation: absolute fulfillment. Have you ever dismantled something you built to create something better in its place? Comment below about a time when letting go of one dream allowed another to take root. Because sometimes our greatest constructions aren't buildings or businesses, but the relationships we carefully reconstruct after they've been broken. Autumn painted Henderson in amber and gold, cooling the desert heat and bringing Friday night lights to the high school football field. Jackson's baseball season wouldn't start until spring, but the team trained year-round, his focus intensifying as college scouts began showing interest. Ethan attended every practice he could, sometimes bringing Eleanor, whose health continued improving thanks to his donation. These quiet moments with his former mother-in-law helped heal old wounds. "I always liked you," she confessed during one such afternoon. "Even after the divorce. I told Tessa she was making a mistake not telling you about the baby. Why didn't you reach out yourself?" Ethan asked without accusation. "Family loyalty," Eleanor sighed, "and fear that you'd become so focused on success that a child would be an inconvenience." "I might have been," Ethan admitted, "back then. But not now," she observed, watching him track Jackson's every movement on the field with unmistakable pride. As Halloween approached, Jackson announced his plan to divide the holiday between both households, trick-or-treating in Ethan's neighborhood before joining David and Tessa for their annual horror movie marathon. Actually, Tessa said during the planning discussion, David will be in Seattle that week. "Conference? So, just you and me for movies?" Jackson asked. "Unless..." Tessa glanced at Ethan. "Your dad might want to join us." The casual invitation carried weight beyond simple holiday plans. Ethan had maintained careful boundaries around Tessa's home, the domain she shared with David, despite their increasingly complicated situation. "I'd like that," Ethan replied, noting the subtle smile that curved Tessa's lips. Halloween night found them on Tessa's couch, surrounded by candy wrappers and Jackson's discarded zombie costume pieces. The teenager had fallen asleep halfway through the second movie, sprawled in the recliner, while Ethan and Tessa remained on opposite ends of the sofa. When the credits rolled, neither moved to start the next film. "He looks so young when he's sleeping," Tessa whispered, watching their son's peaceful face. "I forget sometimes that he's still just a kid." "A kid with college scouts watching him," Ethan added proudly, thanks to his father's arm and his mother's determination. Their eyes met across the darkened living room, the compliment hanging between them. "We did good, didn't we?" Tessa said softly. "Despite everything, we created something amazing." "We did." Ethan hesitated, then added, "I've been thinking a lot about what went wrong between us." "Ethan, no, hear me out. I was obsessed with building something impressive. I thought success meant expansion, acquisition, more and more territory." He shifted closer on the couch. "I never understood that the most valuable things can't be acquired through hostile takeover." Tessa's laugh held no bitterness. "Is this a business metaphor for our marriage?" "Maybe," he smiled. "But the point is, I've learned that real mergers require equal partnership, mutual respect, shared vision." "Very corporate," she teased, but her eyes remained serious. "I'm still learning how to talk about feelings without quarterly projections," he admitted. "You're doing better than you think." Tessa closed the distance between them, her hand finding his in the darkness. "Some partnerships are worth restructuring." Later, after Jackson had stumbled to bed and Ethan prepared to leave, Tessa walked him to the door. Their goodbye lingered, neither willing to end the evening. "Stay," she finally whispered, the simple word carrying complex invitation. Have you ever realized that what you once had wasn't appreciated until it was gone? Share your experience with recognizing value too late, and whether you got a second chance to demonstrate that lesson learned. Because sometimes the most profitable mergers aren't between companies, but between hearts that have finally figured out what truly matters. 1 year after Ethan's bone marrow donation saved Eleanor's life, the ribbon-cutting ceremony for the Henderson Medical Center's new donor match wing brought the community together in celebration. Jackson stood proudly between his parents, scissors poised over the ceremonial ribbon. This facility will help thousands find matching donors, the hospital director announced to applause, all inspired by one family's journey. Family. The word resonated through Ethan as he surveyed the gathered crowd. Eleanor, healthy and beaming. David, supportive despite the changed relationship dynamics. Jackson, growing into a young man with Ethan's determination and Tessa's compassion. And Tessa herself, her hand warm in his, wedding band catching the Nevada sunlight. Their second wedding, held 3 months earlier, had been nothing like their first. No extravagant display of wealth, no corporate networking disguised as celebration. Just family, close friends, and promises made with the wisdom of those who understood exactly what they were choosing. "I can't believe it's been a year," Tessa murmured as they watched Jackson chat animatedly with hospital staff after the ceremony. "Everything's different." "Not everything," Ethan corrected, squeezing her hand. Some things just needed rediscovery. Their path back to each other hadn't been simple. David's initial hurt had evolved into genuine acceptance as he focused on his career advancement. Jackson had navigated the complex family geometry with remarkable adaptability, thriving under the attention of 2 father figures who respected each other's roles. Arizona State called again, Tessa said as they walked toward the parking lot. The scout was impressed with Jackson's showcase performance. "Full circle," Ethan observed. "My alma mater, our son at your school, studying the business you built while playing the sport you loved." Tessa smiled. "The perfect blend. The perfect family merger," he teased, using their private joke. Later that evening, as they prepared dinner in the home they now shared, Jackson burst through the door waving an envelope. "Early acceptance," he shouted. "ASU wants me for their baseball program and the business school." The celebration that followed, calls to Eleanor and David, ice cream despite training season, plans for campus visits, exemplified what Ethan had discovered throughout this unexpected journey. True wealth couldn't be calculated on spreadsheets or measured in square footage. As Jackson texted friends his news, Ethan pulled Tessa close in the kitchen, away from their son's notice. "When I flew to Henderson that day, I thought I was just donating bone marrow," he said quietly. "I had no idea I was actually saving my own life." "Poetic," she teased, though her eyes reflected the same profound gratitude. "I mean it. I was building hotels, but I'd forgotten how to build a home. And now," Ethan glanced toward their son, then back to the woman who had given him a second chance at what truly mattered. "Now, I finally understand the difference." If this story touched your heart, hit that like button. Subscribe for more stories that make you feel, think, and maybe even heal a little. Tell me in the comments what aspect of their journey resonated most with you. And remember, the most powerful reunions don't erase the past. They transform it into the foundation for something even stronger.